Welcome to the Kintsugi Heroes Podcast, where we share inspirational stories of everyday people going through different challenges and how they overcome them. Please be aware that the story you're about to hear may have moments of deeply felt emotions and personal experiences. If anything you hear has a triggering effect, please reach out to someone who can help keep you safe. If you love this conversation, we'd love you to like and share it with your friends so we can continue to share more inspiration and hope to as many people as possible. Now, listen up for our next hero story. This episode with Josie Parata is beautiful. Why? Because throughout all of her telling her story, she just had this smile and she radiated this joy and gratitude at life. You know, being a mother of 4 children and going through domestic violence, and then hearing her account of how she got out of that and then took steps to reclaim her own power and move forward in her life was just really inspirational, really heartwarming. And what she's done since then with regards to giving back to others through her pain is really awesome. You know, the organisation she's founded to help people in the community and help other women who are suffering from domestic violence as well. She's a leader. She's a light, and she's a beautiful person. It's a lovely story, and I know you're going to enjoy it. This is Josie Parata. Hello, here we are. It is another episode of Kintsugi Heroes, and I'm here with Josie Parata today. How are you, Josie?
I'm great. Thank you. Yeah, awesome.
Wonderful to hear. And I'm really grateful and excited that you're here. I mean, I'm really looking forward to your story. So first of all, thank you for, putting your hand up to come along and share your story. It's not always easy for people to do that. And yet the impact it makes is really huge. So I just want to honour you for that and thank you for being here.
Oh, no, my pleasure. If one person catches something that helps them along the way, then tick, tick, we're good.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'm sure there will, that's exactly what will happen. Well, how about we get started? This is about you. This is your story. Take us back to the beginning. Where does your story begin? And take us through the journey.
Oof, okay, where to begin? Well, first of all, I suppose I'll just start off with the fact that I am a single mum of 4 children, between 26 and 16. I live in Sydney, Australia. I am the founder and CEO of a crisis organisation. I am an apostle to a faith gathering, which is a Christian service that we lean toward miracle signs and wonders. That's my thing. But look, my life has a huge span of many traumas in it. I would say, people would say unfortunately, but as we go in this interview now, you'll start to see that actually I am actually grateful for the traumas that I have encountered because of who it's created me to be in today's life. And so walking through, traumas in life and the many that I have had to face and contend with and walk through, there's a huge amount of a list of them, but because for the sake of the time limit and where we're going in this context, I'll do a quick little scenarios of what, but then lean toward one specific in this interview because I've learned as the journeys and all the traumas have that I've been confronted with. Have taken me to spaces of learning the same keys when I face something that's going to help me out the other side. But I feel to kind of very quickly just sort of say some of the journeys only because it could really allow somebody that's in one of these journeys to go, wait, that's me. If she can, I can, sort of thing. So long story short, basically, starting out, I was born in New Zealand. Escaped domestic violence out of my childhood, brought up in a home of domestic violence, then came to Australia at the age of 18, found myself, unfortunately, in a same marriage, domestic violence and verbal abuse and control. I escaped that marriage, pregnant with my fourth child on the way, ended up in a woman's refuge. I was homeless for a period. I've also walked in a stage 4 breast cancer journey where I was told that I would not survive, that I should be writing my will and spending time with my children, because there was nothing that oncology could do for me to get me through. But it was basically live this next year the best you can. And then I currently now sit in a zone of metastasis brain cancer. So, but again, you'll see as we go into this interview where we are, but that's my title. Apparently I have, brain cancer, but, whatever, all good. So, but for the context of this interview and just those little bits of stuff that I have walked through, I've recognized that as I've gone through scenarios, it's the same keys to go through each and every trauma that I have had to face. And so leaning toward, in this interview, I feel to lean toward the scenario of escaping domestic violence, because I know, unfortunately, we are in a space where I know that happens and it's there and it's not acknowledged in some places. So there you go. That's literally who I am starting out with, but get ready for where we're about to go.
For the sake of, time and allowing you the space to go into the space you want to go, I won't comment on what you've just said. Thank you for being really open, and sharing that. Take us through where you want to go now in terms of this adversity, event, or challenge.
Sure. I suppose what I want to lean in to start off with was the first comment of me being brought up in a home of domestic violence. And so does domestic violence impact children? 100% it impacts children. And I really didn't recognize or understand this until I found myself in my own situation with my own children. And, but I also have learned now, looking back, how it affected me as a child is when I found myself again in the same scenario that my mum was in. I unfortunately had a space in my mind where I thought when the verbal abuse and the control started and the narratives around what I could and can't do and who I can hang with and blah, 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 all these controls, that, to be honest, because I'd seen it in my upbringing, I actually thought this was normal. And I thought that this is every marriage and I'm to submit to my husband and, all that. And so when we had blow-up moments in my marriage, because that was kind of a consistent thing that would often happen, and I understand now there is what's called a cycle of violence, and there are things where you're in you're walking on eggshells, you're in a honeymoon stage. After the blow-up, there's normally a bit of a stage. It's a honeymoon stage. It's like, I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that. That will never happen again. And then, and it's a beautiful stage. And so unfortunately, I recognized over the years that I would always look forward to the honeymoon stage, but I didn't know it was called a honeymoon stage until I actually got out. But that was the stage that overrode my thinking, because it was always a great stage. It was the meal. Like, let's go out. It was the Pampers. It was the gifts. It was the whatever. I'm sorry. It will never happen again. And then it was like a beautiful, fun, whatever space. And, I felt loved and felt wanted. But then, as time, whatever went on, here we go. Now we're on the eggshells. I'm walking around. I don't want to, cause it whatever and allow an explosion to happen. And so when I recognized what this all was and I learnt about it, I remember it in my childhood. And so, yes, did it affect children? Does it affect children? Yes, it does. It affected me as a young child to think that when I became an adult and I saw it, this is normal. It is not normal. And then when I had my own children, it was very much in a space of, okay, here comes the explosion. I could see it about to happen. And there was a sending to the bedroom, go to the bedroom, just go. And I was putting away. But of course they could hear everything and they could, hear the thumps, hear the whatevers. And so, but I thought again, they're out of sight, out of mind. So, they're good. But in actual fact, they weren't. And unfortunately, because I'm going to go to a raw moment, my eldest son at the time, who was only 8 years old, so I had three children at the end of the wake up call and recognizing that actually what I was sitting in was not normal. We had a scenario where unfortunately relationship with dad and my eldest was not the greatest. And he was consistently told he was hopeless, he was fat, he was ugly, he was not going to make it in life. So the words that were spoken over his life was, hammering him to a place of no confidence and just a retrieval, and he retreating, and he was not great around adults. He was shy, all that. But what happened in my changing of the tide moment was unfortunate, but now I look at it and go, gosh, thank God that did happen. But every time a blow up would happen, if it was between him and his dad, I'd say, just go to your room. And I'd send him away. And then I'd go back and I'd chat with him and say, look, it's not you. It's not you. And I'd speak encouragement and whatever over him. But this one moment, I did not realize how much the comments and the stuff that was going on in his life was impacting him. That this moment I stepped into the bedroom. He had a bunk bed. And I actually found him. So the bunk had these knobs at the end of each corner. And on the right, this side here coming in to the room, he had managed to put a belt around the top of that knob. And he put it around his neck and he was facing out. So once it had come around his neck and it was there, I tried to lift him to pull it over the knob and I couldn't get it. And I called out to his father, who made some comment that it was all attention and he wasn't coming. But I praise God now, looking back, that somehow, some way, I got a massive strength and I pushed him up and he dropped down and he just looked up at me with these little eyes and he just said, Mummy, I just want to go back to God, because I had started going to church. And so my kids were learning, because that was like my retreat, was going into a church on a Sunday. It allowed me to put the kids in kids' church and I could just sit at the back. And so, but also they were learning about some stuff, and he just said, I just want to go back to God, and that was my wake up call, that if I didn't get out of the space, and I was pregnant with my fourth child, that I was in fear of what that child might have to walk through as well. So I praise God that the church I was in, I opened up, because I have to say that, it can be embarrassing. We can be full of pride and we don't want to tell people what's going on behind closed doors. And so I did open up to some pastors at the church. And one thing I have to say too, that I'm grateful now all these years later, is hearing that they actually, didn't say, well, wives, submit to your husband and, do whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they basically said, you need to go down and speak to these guys down here. And it was a local refuge in my area. And so I was referred into this refuge, and it was my saving grace. It was our space of safety, because the pride did step in and I did kind of go, refuge, because I'd seen these movies and seen, bunk beds and people all over the place, and thought, I don't want to go there. But anyway, I thought I'm going to go meet them, and I met them and they showed us this amazing, unit room, and we had our own space. And I thought, right, okay, I can do this, because, see, I'm here in Australia. I'm from New Zealand and all my family were in New Zealand, but I had come from it. So I didn't feel I'm going to run back to that, because I need to run away from it. So I went into the refuge, and honestly, it was in that space that I really found refuge. It was a space of safety. It was a space of waking up to the situation and recognizing that actually what we were sitting in was not okay. My son, was able to open up his eyes and just get some respite in that space, because we weren't now walking on eggshells. And I now work in the field of domestic violence, but I've learned and I've heard that, to be honest, people in these kind of trauma spaces trying to break free from abuse and domestic violence. I mean, I used to think domestic violence is violence only, but now the umbrella of domestic violence actually covers, financial control, verbal, emotional abuse, and I've recognized over the years too now that actually the clients that I have come into my space that are coming out of physical and those that are coming out of verbal and emotional, those clients there, the verbal and emotional, are so much harder to move forward than it is for those that are coming out of the physical. I know that sounds a bit warped, but the bruises fade, they go away. But when they are emotionally and, being controlled, it's now a knowing, it's now a learnt behavior that we've got to deal with and break out of. So anyway, I found myself in that refuge, and it was in that space. I remember one night I had my head, we had a double bed or queen base, and it was me and one of my kids, and then I had a single bed, bunk bed on top, and then I had a porta cot. And so the kids were all asleep this one night, and I remembered I was crying into my pillow, and I was, because I'm a Christian now, so I'm like just going, God, like, is this my lot? Is this, here am I, I'm pregnant with my fourth, like, is this me? Is like, what have I got? Like, and honestly, as clear as day, it was a clear voice. And all I heard, I feel like in my heart and my spirit, was that, no, I've got your back, but do everything that you need to do now to move forward, because I will use you in what the future looks like. And I was like, okay, just do everything that I can do. And I have to say, the refuge was absolute amazing space. It got us out of that not so great scenario, but it really did help us to breathe. It helped us to see that there was a way forward. It helped us to learn that actually what we were sitting in was not okay. But I have to say there was, because I'm now sitting in the title of single mum, and I'm homeless because we're at a refuge. We've got nowhere to live. We've got no furniture, no nothing. But I started to see gaps specifically in my community on the Northern Beaches as to what was there for single parents to get supported. What I started to see very clearly, unfortunately, was services that gave handouts, not hand-ups. I mean, I had single mums telling me, go here, go there, you'll get X, Y, Z, just say this, Jace, just say that, blah, blah, blah. But I had this conviction that I wanted to get up and out of our situation. I did not want to just be in a victim and poverty mentality that relied on the help of everybody else. And so I'm grateful that I saw all that, because then it was in that space that I believe that what needed to be created was a service that came in partnership with these ones that were doing X, Y, Z. But I created a service at the time. It was called SMS Lighthouse, so single mum support, and it was specifically for doing the things that other services were not doing. And I was big on hand ups, not handouts. And we were about equipping mums and children to move forward. And because I believe that specifically mums, if we sit in a victim and poverty mentality, what we sit in, what we talk about, what we think about, it actually does go down to our kids. And I didn't want, because I was learning to teach my kids that, basically crap happens, stuff happens, but we're going to build a bridge and we're going to get over it and we're going to live life well. And that's sort of what SMS Lighthouse was formatted as. And because I think too, when you're in any type of crisis, you get what I believe. I don't know if it's a counseling term, whatever, but I had what I call crisis mentality. And there was a fogginess that came upon me. And, I'm quite learned. I kind of know stuff, but it was like, because I was in this trauma, the fog came over, and I struggled in times to see how I could move forward. I struggled in seeing pathways. And so that's what I saw in my space. And I thought, right, I remember thinking, I wish I had one person that would just sit with me, because I got given bundles of documents, fill these out for them, Centrelink, housing, court, blah, blah, blah. But my mind was in a fog that I was like, how do I do this? And so because I didn't get that support, that's what we are at Lighthouse. That's what we are. We are very much about, okay, let's sit beside you. We will do the writing. We will do that. We'll ask the questions. You just answer. And so we do all the documentation, and, because we want to bring them out of the fogginess, because I know what that feels like. And I've recognized now in all these scenarios, there is a traumatic fogginess in in lots of scenarios. It's not just domestic violence because of all the other things I walk through that a fogginess comes because we're so blinded to what we've been diagnosed with, to what we can see in our faces as to what the circumstance is, that this is a key that I want to give, that while we're in a traumatic situation, even though the stuff is going on here, we don't lift our heads up and start to see the other side of the trauma, then we will be stuck in this space and it's quite hard to come out. But we need to look above and recognize that actually I'm not the first one in this journey. Probably somebody else has done it before me and probably they've come through the other side. So if someone else can come out the other side, then so can I.
Thank you so much, Josie. I've got a few questions. I'd love to, if you could take us back to your domestic violence, I guess the situation. Like,
yes,
tell me, like, when it started through to when you left, like, what did that look like? What was your daily life? How did you feel? And then, just take me through that, please, if that's okay.
So, I'm embarrassed to say that actually, looking back, it started literally from our first get-together. And, there was just feelings of, we hung out. I'm in Sydney, Northern Beaches, and I was 22 years old, I think it was about. And I was in that party scene, going out clubbing and everything. And my husband actually was a bouncer at one of the local clubs. And so on that first meeting, after the night, the club closed, we hung out a bit, and there was just comments that were made that made me feel a little bit like, I don't know, like there was name calling. But I kind of brushed it. There was just some controls around. So we did go back to, because there was a gathering, a get together at him and his flatmate's place. So there was a few of us all went back, but there was just things around. I think I picked up, because he was into bodybuilding and stuff. So I picked up these bodybuilding magazines and I was flicking through them, and it was an aggressive grab and don't you touch them. And was quite upset at the fact that I picked up. And anyway, and so, do you think that would have been my, don't like this guy, but no. So there was these things then, but I kind of just, I don't know, I pushed over them. And then as we started then dating, there was just control signs around money, where whenever we'd go somewhere, there was always he would step back and I would pay for everything. But I don't know. But I think because I now know, looking back, that I grew up I was the eldest of 4 children. And so I mothered, I think, my children when my parents were in this space all the time. I mothered my children, my siblings. And so I think when there was the money thing that would always happen and I would pay for everything, that it was like, oh, no, it's okay. I can do this. And I think now, looking back, I had what I now recognize as being, the rescuer, because I rescued my siblings away from all the stuff all the time. And I wanted to make sure everything was okay, and I would smooth things over. So anytime, he would say, and if I disagreed, there would be a blow up. And so I'd learned to kind of just whatever was to be was to be. And there was the moments where I did stand up to some stuff, and there was just verbal repercussions. And so I think I just learned then in our relationship to actually walk on eggshells and be very mindful of what I said, what I did. But again, see, my thinking was so warped that I thought this was just normal, that this is what relationships were like. I definitely know different now, but so right from the get-go, and then I found myself going into church. I was brought up in a church context, and came away in my teenage years, and then went back into church after we'd had our first child. And I think too, because when I fell pregnant with my first child and we had him, of course, there was always a hope that, well, he's the dad, so I hope things get better. And then before I knew it, I was, number 2 child, number 3 child, and things hadn't got better. And then on, I think this number 2 child, he'd come into the church and see, because unfortunately there was some gambling issues as well. And so when he'd come into the church, things changed a bit. So I'm like, right, here it is. Here it is. It's good. And there was a moment, but it was a very small moment. And then he stopped coming. And then unfortunately the traits came back of the gambling and the verbal stuff and the whatevers. And it just got worse. And then before you knew it, I was pregnant with my 4th. And it was only, like I said, because I thought it was normal, that I could walk this through. I could put my kids aside and keep them safe, whatever, that I just thought that when that situation happened with my son, that was my wake-up call. That's what got me out. And as horrible as that moment was, I'm so grateful that unfortunately it came to that, because, yeah, moving forward, I mean, I would hope now, looking back, that with my relationship with God, that I may have had, my eyes opened up. I think I was on that journey, and maybe I probably would have eventually got it. But, yeah, for the sake of the kids, we got out sooner. And that 4th child it's funny, like she's got a whole different demeanor, because I went into the refuge with her pregnant. And so she's never had, she's never had to live under it. So she's, her, I don't know, she just carries herself way differently, because I don't think she's experienced any of the stuff. So, yeah, it's interesting. We don't think that this stuff affects our children, but it really does.
Sorry for the interruption. This is Ian Westmoreland, the founder of Kintsugi Heroes, and thank you for listening to this story from one of our amazing heroes. Our mission is for these stories to provide hope and inspiration to people experiencing life challenges, and to also educate the broader community on how best to provide support. If you would like to help us to continue to produce more hero stories and cover more adversity themes, we would welcome all donations. These can be made via our website, kintsugiheroes.com.au. The donate function is at the bottom of the homepage. We'd also welcome any feedback. You can email me direct using ian@kintsugiheroes.com.au. Now let's get back to the story.
That is so interesting, Josie, and what you've just said then about your 4th child, your daughter, sort of is a great segue into the questions that I've got around. What was it like for your kids? Obviously, you've spoken about your eldest son, which was the turning point. How old were the others, and did they display anything over the years, that was concerning? Maybe not at the time, because you had no idea there was something wrong. But, what was going on for them? And talk me through that and the journey for them, if that's okay.
So the eldest was 8 at the time. Then there's a 5-year gap to the next daughter. And then the other one was 2. And so she was still little. They were both little. The 2-year-old, not so much, because, he was, but in saying that, we've had to deal with, he's now 18. And what's risen up is there is some, anger stuff that's come up. And we've often had to, not often, with school and teachers and stuff, we've had to deal with that through counselling. Because, see, the thing is, as I came out, great that we were out, but I had a bit of an attitude at the same time that, do you know what, he's always going to be the father. I don't want to disconnect if it means that, it's just a visit, because we hadn't come into any agreements of custody or anything like that. But there was some visits and things, sports, and he came to sports and that. And so there was this relationship moving forward, even though we weren't living under the same roof. And there were blow-up moments, even being out at a dinner, at a sports thing, whatever, there was blow-up. So they still saw stuff. And as they got older, and many times I would have to say, we're done, we're out. And so we would take, obviously I would take them to a space in my car so that when and if we could just get in the car and go. And eventually, it's got to a point where, specifically when they were younger, where I was able to say, I'm out. But unfortunately, moving forward, there's been this real relationship between them that he's very big on monetary provision. And as kids get older and they want the XYZs, they've worked out how to, pull from this one to get that thing and whatever. And so for so many years, it's been, just don't even ask because, but I don't know if it's guilt that he carries because it's like literally whatever they want, they get financially. But it's really, I think, taking the kids to a space of, they are financially spoiled. But they know that there's no relationship. Unfortunately, there's no, this is my dad. And, and there's no genuine relationship. It's all about he's Santa, whatever I need, dad, I need shoes and they have to be this and they have to be, and it's like, all right, the money's been transferred. And so, I really dislike seeing that because unfortunately what I've seen specifically in my second daughter's, world is that she's in a bit of a space of reliant. I mean, she's 21 now and she's, jobs off and on, but she made a comment a few months ago about, we talked about employment and that, and she said, but why? Like, I'll just call him, he'll send it, and it's just like, oh gosh, so has it still affected? It is still affecting, the behaviors, but unfortunately now, I have to take my hands off because adult, 21 and then 18-year-old, and I see, the 18-year-old, has had some anger stuff go on. And in some of the counselling sessions, it was the anger of not having a father, and then unfortunately too, the impact of it all with regard to the older son, there's a 5-year difference between him and number 2 is that when, he grew up kind of being, the male figure in their lives. And there was many times then in his teenage years with the younger ones, I'd have to say, no, it's fine. I will discipline. I will, thank you, but you're not dad, so I think he took on a lot of responsibility. I think he blamed himself for many years that it was because of me we left. So I had to keep reiterating that, it was not at all because of you. I'm grateful because of you that you helped me to see and open up my eyes. But it's interesting that, the 3 of them specifically have, had this ongoing thing. The eldest and him, they do not talk. They are not connected at all. And then the 4th one, there is obviously she knows he's dad and stuff, but it's a different relationship again. But again, there's that money thing that happens too. But just the demeanor of each of them and their attitudes and stuff, definitely there's been some impacts. And I think it's definitely got a lot to do with what they maybe saw growing up. And specifically even after in catch-ups, and some of them were like an hour and a half kind of a meal. And then by the end of it, it'd be like, okay, guys, we're going, because it became just verbally abusive in places and definitely affects the kids. And like I said, even moving forward now, as young adults, I consistently will say, that's not okay. This is, but again, when they're getting handed anything that they're asking for, it's so hard as a mum watching on, because we're not equipping, especially when I'm about equipping and not enabling. So, and how do you disconnect? How do you fully disconnect them from somebody now that they're adults? It's very difficult.
Yeah, it's their journey, not yours, in terms of their relationship with their dad, right?
Totally. And look, I didn't want to be, you're never ever going to see, because I don't know. I mean, maybe that'd have been better. I'm not sure.
Did you have the choice to do that? Do you think that if you said that he wouldn't have wanted to see them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know if it'd be about not wanting to, but I think because I stepped in the field of domestic violence, I got, I knowledge on legal. I did an advanced diploma in all what was to do with this stuff. I know the legal system, and I think his fear even around trying to go for some kind of custody, even though, like, I get it, like, he'd have rights to it. He made a comment one day and said, well, I'll never take you down the court road because you probably know the best lawyers, the best whatevers anyway, and I would lose. So I kind of, as bad as this sounds, I sort of was like, yeah, like, so we never had a court battle. And I probably could have said, actually, we're out, your behaviours, I don't want this around the kids. And I probably could have. But I also have a thing in my space where when we walk through things, rather than dwell and regret, let's just not go there, because what can I do to fix what's already happened? So, yeah, it's more about how do we move forward, and all I can keep doing is keeping my narrative to the kids in a space of, like, guys, that behaviour, that this, whatever. And sometimes I think they think it's a game because they can get what they want. And I've even actually, to be honest, I've even had a conversation with the dad and said, please stop, because, you're not helping the situation. Like, you just giving the money whenever, blah, blah, blah. It's not, so I'm not the one going, get all the money you can get. It's like, please stop. You are just really not helping them. And then, even recently, because 10 grand was given to the 21-year-old to go to Dubai 2 weeks ago. And I said, this is like, she should have saved, whatever. And then now he's saying, that's it, I'm done. I can't do this all the time. But it's like, please, yes, stop. So, yeah, it's hard when they become adults now. So, yeah.
How did your eldest son navigate the path after the incident occurred and you left and went to the refuge? Like, what was the impact on him, and how did he navigate that as a young boy? Did it hinder him?
No, it actually allowed him to, find a voice. And I think what happened was that we not only had this amazing space that was our space, and they had an amazing playground and all that at this block that we were in. It just allowed him he came out of the shy little boy that he was, and this joy became, he became joyful, and I think it was he wouldn't know that it was that, but I think it was the no longer having to walk around on eggshells. Be careful what you say, be careful what you do, be careful, be careful, be careful. And whereas now, I just remember seeing this happy little boy that even the teachers had made a comment that, because obviously I'd kept them in the loop and they knew what was happening and where we were at. They said a couple of months later, like, we have a whole different little child in our classroom now. It was such it really brought him to a space of definite safety, and he found himself, and he began to shine just in, rugby. Because one of the big things, we put our kids into rugby league at a very young age. Like, at 3, he was playing rugby league, and he was a really good little player, but that was the one thing that he was told all the time was, you're hopeless, you're never going to make it. Like, nobody wants you. You're a dumb player, whatever. And on a footy day, he might get 4 or 5 tries, but he'd get told that, you missed that one kid when you didn't tackle him. And, so now that wasn't happening. And he was stepping in a game he loved. And, through his teenage years, he went on to play, with Harold Matts and Ashley Ball for Manly, rugby league. And, went over to New Zealand and was playing in some development squads for the New Zealand Warriors. And, so he just loved the game, because he now recognised that, he could just be the best that he could be without being criticised. And he'd learned through, because the other great thing was that through the refuge, they had counselling, and they had, some qualified people that understood what these kids are breaking out of. And so he was taught on how to face some stuff, they did some sand play and things like that, and was able to talk about how he was feeling. And so I'm so grateful for those kind of spaces that were set up, because it really did help him, come through, that's for sure. So, yeah, he's in a good space. And, look, we all have, mountains to climb. We're ups and downs. We're human. But yeah, he really thrived and came out of that situation. Other than I think just the guilt at times for him being the reason why we left. But I had to keep reiterating that he wasn't the reason. He was actually the doorway that allowed me to see the way forward. So, yeah.
I'm so pleased to hear that. Tell me, what were the key things that helped get you through once you got to the refuge?
Yeah. I think, well, I know, and I am a Christian, but I hate religion because I'm about relationship. But I really believe that, having a relationship with the Jesus that I know was just my hook, that was my hope to move forward. And in the space, I really recognized that I felt comforted that, I was in this space and somehow, some way we were going to get through. I had been, like I said, I got this realization that actually, this journey is at the time crappy and whatever it was, that this was a pathway that I was to take, but I was going to take note along the way on how to break free, how to move forward, because I really wanted to come alongside other women and children who may be stuck in the same situation that I was in. I was, really able to just recognize that even though stuff is not great, even though we have situations that are not the best scenarios, that 100% there are, even if the road is very narrow, there is a way forward. And I've learned one of the specific scriptures in all of my journeys that has really helped me to move forward is the faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things unseen. And I learned in these journeys that, if I saw the thing before I got the thing, so whatever it is you're sitting in that's not so great, see the opposite to what you want to see. As I saw that and visualized it, that gave me hope that somehow I was going to get through. As I spoke it, proclaimed it, and confessed it, what happened in that was, and it sounds weird when you're confessing the opposite to what you're sitting in. When I was diagnosed that I was going to die with breast cancer and I was not going to survive, and every day I'm brushing my teeth, doing my hair in the mirror, I'm going, Josie, you will live and not die. You will live and not die. When I first started doing that, it was weird because the doctors are saying, it's gone through your bloodstream, you're riddled, it's traveling through your lungs, it's, there's nothing we can do. We'll give you chemo, it'll prolong a little bit, but it's not going to heal you. And so I did grab a hold of a scripture, and that it was that I would live and not die. And so I took that on, and I saw myself cancer free. I saw myself out of the refuge. I saw myself, in a situation that I was living in a home with my kids, and we were happy, and we were free. We were not having to walk on eggshells anymore. I confessed it. We're going to have an amazing life. We're going to have an amazing house. We're going to, we can live and not walk on eggshells. And, so I saw it, I confessed it. And then my next thing was I believed in my heart. And I think to get yourself to believe in your heart, when you see it and you confess it, eventually, I believe when we confess something, because initially it feels weird, but when we confess, we keep confessing, I believe it's here. It's in our head and it sounds weird. But as we continue to confess, I believe it goes from our head and it hits our heart. And eventually we believe it because we have told ourselves many, many times, we've got this, we're going to get through this. And in that journey, because there is actually a scripture too, it says, believe in your heart and confess with your mouth and it shall be done. And so I was like, righto, confess with my mouth. So that was it. It was seeing, believing, confessing, and then seeing the thing. And, and then always before I knew it, the tide would start to turn. The reports would start to, become even greater and better than what I was even hoping. We came out of the refuge. I said to my kids, because, faith is seeing, believing, and confessing. I said, right, we need a house because we're homeless. Let's write a list. What are we going to what are we going to believe for? And on my first list, I think we had, 4-bedroom house, great neighbors, in this area on the northern beaches. And so it was like 3 things on it. And every day we'd say, come on guys. So we'd say, thank you God for our 4-bedroom house. Thank you Jesus for our whatever in this area. And then before we knew it, the refuge said, oh, we've got a property we're going to move you into. It's a, residential property, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Where is it? And we went up. It's the area we confessed. It was a 4-bedroom and the neighbors were amazing. It had everything on the list. And then over the years, this is what happens is that when we start to see breakthroughs happen, over the years, as we've had to move many other times again, because I was under this program of, transitional housing coming out of domestic violence. We had to move a few times, and each time we wrote a list. And I got to say, our list grew every time we moved. There was, double garage, dishwasher, fence, great neighbors with kids, blah, blah, blah. The last one, I had water views, I had everything. And I swear, every time, tick, 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 tick. Why? Because we've seen it, we've confessed it, we've believed it. And so I also have to say to anybody that in any kind of traumatic situations, whatever it is, it's real. It's real. The trauma stuff is real. But, as we start to confess, it really allows us to take our eyes off the circumstance and hope for something over the hill. And it just, I don't know, it just brought us to a space of really seeing that proclaiming, confessing, believing is for real. And it does make a way. And look, one step at a time. Just take a step at a time. I mean, I say to my clients now, because out of the refuge, I believe by God, a strategy on how to set up this crisis centre, helping mums and children escape. I say to my mums, they come in, okay, wallow. You can tell me all your whatever, just pity party, do your pity party. But when we're going to work in a case management plan to move forward, we're done. No more pity parties, because I get it, been there, done it. And we're going to look at the positives and how we can move forward. And look, it is just a space where I've seen breakthrough in many, many families' lives. And because of what we've done at Lighthouse and being real at the same time, and I found it very hard at the beginning to receive accolades and awards from members of parliament and, Rotary clubs and whatever. But I recognized that somebody said to me, in taking the rewards and the trophies and the whatevers, it actually will allow, doors to open up for the organisation. So receive it and do what you do. And so, yeah, look, I never ever thought being in that refuge back when I was pregnant with my 4th in a not so great situation. My son had just tried to take his life at 8 years old, that today I'd be sitting in a place, mentoring and helping other families to move forward and out of their situation. And, look, I know that, again, we're not void of trials, but let's build the bridge. Let's take one step at a time. But also I want to say, whatever it is you're sitting in, please swallow your pride. Please reach out. Please, go to a space where there could be some professional services that can actually help you to move forward in the stuff. Because in doing that, you'll find somebody that understands your situation. And I guarantee you, they will have seen someone that's come through the other side. But swallow the pride and reach out and ask for the help that you need, because the pathways are 100% there.
Wow. Thank you so much, Josie. I've loved everything that you've said. I know that so many women will feel, so fueled and grateful for that message, and hearing what you've been through and what you've done, but also what you explained at the end, which applies to anybody going through any kind of trauma. And it's so, so true.
Anything.
What we focus on expands. If we look down inside our current circumstance, it expands. It becomes our whole world, and it takes over things. And I love the way that you taught your kids to see the opposite. What a gift. What an absolute gift. And I love that the example that you've given and shown how it's worked, and look at where you are today. So I just want to thank you for what you've done, and I love it. I love everything, and I'm just really grateful for you sharing the story so you can help others, inspire others, and show them what's possible, as well as how to get through these traumatic times.
100%. I will add, because people may ask questions about the cancer journey, I miraculously received a year after that journey, 2012, for the breast, I received reports that they don't know how or where or whatever, but there is not one tumour in my body. The doctors were shocked, and I'm a stat in their books, and so they've kept an eye on me over the years. It was only in 19 that I had headaches, and unfortunately there is a tumour that popped up in the back of my head. They're calling it a metastasis from my breast, but I'm like, wait, but I had no tumours in my breast left, so how does it metastasize? But whatever. Look, the crazy thing is, though, for those who get faith, that, you know, we are a target, unfortunately, in the spiritual realm, if anyone's sitting in that space as well. But God, because when I got diagnosed with the breast cancer was on the same day I got given the keys to the women's department to open up the women's department. And I went, I'm still doing this thing, attack my breast, all good. I'm dealing with nurturing mothers, so I think this is a spiritual attack. The breast has been attacked. And then in 19, I opened up a department helping the men to come out of addictions and homelessness. And then on the same day, I got the council keys to that building. I get brain cancer. I'm like, wait, what? What's this? What's this? And then I felt in my spirit that actually, because the enemies attack the head, because I'm going for the men who are the head of the household. So I'm not in fear of this stuff, but, the doctors are happy at what they're seeing. It's moving. It's doing what it's doing. This thing's not taking me out.
You are a warrioress, Josie, and well done. Go you. So inspirational. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for everything.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, amazing program, amazing space to help others.
Yeah, it is. You're welcome. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, Evelyn.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Kintsugi Heroes. Please like and share the show to your friends so we can get this out to even more people. If you have a story you'd like to share with us, please reach out using the contact details below. And join us next week for our next hero's story. Until then, keep being you, and remember that we are all heroes in our own unique way.
Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. When it hits you in the middle of the night and the truth burns so bright. Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. Take pride in those cries. It's only for tonight, and then you rise. Only when you're broken. Only when you're broken.